Spirit Switchboard, airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3, New Orleans.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Switchboard. We are live from the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Network 105.3 and 107.7 FM New Orleans. Please welcome to the show my sweetest friend, Meredith Tollison, who is an animal communicator and intuitive coach. Thank you for joining me, Meredith.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, so I'm saying that you're my first guest, but my sister was last week, so she might get her nose out of joint a wee bit because technically she was, but I think that you are. So I'm like so excited to have you here. And I was thinking about when we connected for the first time. And that was like, I think 10 years ago or more. It was 10 years ago or more. And it was the very first time I had ever used, I had to get my passport for the very first time. And I went to Tupelo, Mississippi and I met you. The very first time that I went anywhere outside of Canada as an adult. I was in my early 40s.
And randomly, it was Tupelo, Mississippi, right?
Yes. Well, it was great. It was so great. And you guys were so welcoming. It was, it felt like coming home. Like it felt like being at home, hanging out with you guys.
Well, you know, it's funny since you mentioned coming on this show with you, I've been trying to think about that. And I was trying to put a timestamp on that trip. And the most interesting part of that is I realized that you actually started me back on my intuitive journey in that trip.
I love that. And we're going to get into it. We're going to get to a question that I have for you later in the show, but it is about that. It is about, welcoming our intuitive abilities. So talk to me about being a medical not a medical intuitive, but I want to talk about animal communication. And it's a weird thing for me because I know that you say I was played a part in your intuitive journey. But for me, when animals come in, it freaks me out. When I'm doing sessions for people and their pets come through, they get super emotional. It's an emotional connection people have with their pets, living and passed over, right? They're a part of our family. They're just part of our family unit. And when we lose them, we grieve the same. So how did you move into stepping into being an animal communicator?
Completely by accident. And it's been an amazing journey. So, I guess it's been 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not sure. I lost a kitty. And somehow on Facebook or some other social media platform, I came across this opportunity to attend a one-off, 1 hour, 2 hour long webinar about animals on the other side. And just out of curiosity, I thought, well, I'll go. This is early in the days of Zoom where this was all, completely new and different. And I thought, well, I'll just go and pay attention to that and watch this and see what happened. And it was so incredibly moving. I got completely sucked in and I started following this woman and I registered in her school and began studying animal communication, and many, many efforts later was certified in animal communication. And now I'm also a TA helping to teach other people about animal communication. So my journey started, as so many other animal communicators do, with the loss of one of my beloved animals. Now, the majority of the clients that I work with, I can work with animals alive or in spirit.
Right.
And so I do both. I also have a background in training and behavior, mainly with dogs, but I have people who consult with me with animals that are alive to work with behavior issues that they're having. I have people who want to connect with animals in spirit to get some healing about their passing. So it's amazing how many people come through with their connections with their animals.
And do you find, what are some common common reasons why somebody would seek, like, I get the grief part, but if somebody was reaching out for an animal that's here, what are, like, is there a common theme, like one common question that comes to mind, or is it really varied?
It's pretty varied. And sometimes people will come to me to work with an animal in spirit and then go, oh my gosh, I didn't know you could talk to alive animals. So I want
Right.
you to read my kitty cat. He's doing this weird thing where he sits in the corner and looks up at the ceiling all the time. What's that about?
Right.
So yeah, it's pretty varied. It's pretty varied. A lot of times it has to do with a particular behavior that they don't
Right.
understand, or trying to figure out what the message is, the lesson is that their animal's here to work with them on.
And yeah, do you find that, like, when I'm working, I know that when I'm working, it sounds like English on the inside of my head. So it sounds that I and words that I understand. When it first started for me, it still freaks me out. Like, honestly, when they rub up against me, then I know that I've got this animal, and it can help me identify what animal I have coming through based on how they're touching me. But it feels like when you're in a lake and something touches you and you don't know what it is, it freaks me out. I would not want to do that full time. Kudos to you. Like, I love animals, but it freaks me out every time they come in. But it sounds, whether it's their team, my team, the client's team, I'm not sure the hows and whys. What is that like for you when you're receiving, like, the see, hear, feel, taste, smell? Do you get it all? Is one muscle stronger than another? How does that work?
I really get it all. When I first started opening up,
Right.
I went through a lot of intuitive development and development of my psychic senses to see, what were the things that came through the best for me. And strangely enough, hearing is one of my strongest senses. And from what I understand, that's kind of unusual for a lot of people.
Right. And so
But
is it your inside? I always phrase inside ear, outside ear. So is it your
inside ear,
inside? Okay.
it's my inside ear. Thankfully, I don't hear too much with my outside ear, because that would be the thing that freaked me out.
And I'm the opposite. I'm okay with the outside ear.
No, an inside ear includes a whole lot of things, including,
Mm.
a random earworm or a song that plays on the radio, or, hearing cat toenails scratching on the hardwood floors in the middle of the night, any of those things. But I open all of my sessions by explaining to my clients who've never had a session with me before or anything like this, that I receive information in all different ways. I see, hear, feel, touch, taste, smell. I also get downloads. I also get knowings, and I also get feelings in my body. Um,
Right.
and sometimes I'll ask the animal to show me in my body something
Mm.
relevant in their body to be able to get the message across to their human, right?
Right.
Um, so I always set a very strong intention going in that I am just the conduit for this information, and that it
Right.
comes into me in a way that I can receive comfortably and understand for the greatest and highest good of all connected,
Right.
and be able to share it with the client in a way that they can receive it and understand.
So do you find in your, or have you found in your journey, when you have made that commitment to be of service, right? So we're going to be of service. We're of service to our clients, to the pets. We're of service to something that's bigger than us, right? Whatever that may be, we're being of service. We really are the middle guy. So did you find at the beginning there was a push pull? I'm going to dip my toe in because I feel like I'm on the right track, and oh no, I'm going to back up because no. I don't think I really want to do that. But then you come, when it's a path and purpose, you kind of get pulled into it anyway. Did you find people were asking you to do it when you were not really confident in wanting to step into it? Or do you find once you knew, you just jumped in both feet?
Do you mean into animal communication or into intuition, or all of the above?
All of the above,
All
because
of
I
the
think it
above.
goes hand in hand, right? You have
Yeah.
to have this confidence and almost like a bubble where you're not going to worry what anybody else thinks or says about who you are when you're stepping out, being transparent. Here I am, and this is what I do.
Yeah, and I know that that's something that you can relate to as well.
Mhm.
The coming out process
Yeah.
of, hey, this is something I'm doing, and I'm doing this professionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of judgment that can be surrounding that. Fortunately, through my school and through the community that I've developed through that, we have an incredible support network. And, we have regular, gatherings and meetings where we support each other in that, because I mean, it is a thing. There are people who are still going to step forward and be like, this is really, you think you're doing this, it was, to answer your original question, it was almost a compulsion. Like I couldn't help myself.
Right.
I've always been a fixer, a supporter, a doer. I want to help people. I want to help people feel better and heal wounds and all of that. But I never knew in what capacity I was intended to do that. Obviously, medical school wasn't my thing, counseling sort of seemed like a path for me. And then this happened to me, and I'm able to help people heal and help people find their greatest and highest selves through the work of their animals.
Right.
So I almost can't help myself. It's amazing. And the animals keep bringing me in, even more so than the people.
Right. That's so lovely. Right. It's just lovely. Everything.
Yeah.
And so have you had the experience, like, I know that you say that you mostly work with or dogs are originally the thing, right? Dogs are originally the thing. And you started after losing your kitty. But do other animals come through as well too? And do they show you the exact same way, or do different animals present differently when they are coming through to you? Like is the process the same?
The process is completely the same. And interestingly enough, when I connect with an animal, they rarely show me their physical form. And I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know how different this is from the work that you do. Like I always wanted to see the outline of a person standing in front of me,
until you do.
Until you do, right?
Yeah.
I do a lot of grounding and clearing and protecting to be sure that I don't have like random animals just showing up talking to me all the time.
Right.
So really, I only connect with an animal when I am setting the intention to connect with that animal. And more often than not, what they show me, and I see it almost like a video playing in my head.
Right.
They'll show me images that are significant for the purposes of that reading on that particular day. What does my human need to know about this situation on this particular day? So one of my favorite examples, this was even while I was training and I was practicing with a colleague. I kept seeing this great, big, enormous, like bulldog, like Spike the Bulldog on Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
The great big guy. Well, the dog I was reading was actually a teeny tiny little toy poodle who wore, bows in her hair and glittery collars around her neck. But she fancied herself this great big bad bulldog. And so that's what she showed me.
Right.
So I've learned through experience and for doing this for quite a few years to never tell my client, so I'm seeing this great big bulldog and I think that's what your animal looks like.
Right.
I've learned that the animals show me what it is they want me to know about their personalities and about the messages that they have for their people at that particular moment, on that particular day, at this particular space and time.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've had that sort of a similar journey as well too, with people or with pets that have crossed over at the beginning, receiving in a certain way, and that muscle grew. So the more work I did, that muscle grew. And so there was a little more clarity attached to what they were showing, especially personalities. And I see that as well too, right? They may have passed when they're older, but they want to present like they're younger when they were feeling at their best. So, animals, how they present their personalities is, fascinating to me, and their connection to their owners and the depth of love that they have for their owners as well too, right? Do they express that in the same way?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most common questions I receive from owners, if you don't mind my just jumping there.
Yeah, please
do. Are they okay? Especially for animals that have crossed over. Are they okay? Did I do the right thing if they had to help them cross over?
Yeah.
Did I do it too soon? Did I wait too long? Are they mad at me? Or, these are very, very common questions. We always try and rephrase the question in a way that gives the animal more of an opportunity to elaborate on their response rather than yes, no, it's okay, any of those things. What do you want your human to know about how you feel about the way that you crossed.
Right. And
And
I sometimes, for me, I try to remember too, those yes, no questions sometimes feel like anybody could sit here and answer a yes, no. Show me them more around it so that there's a little bit more evidential and depth to what I'm about to share. So that sounds exactly like what you're saying, right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
want more depth to it.
Right, right. It just gives them an opportunity to share more of significance that will bring their human the healing or the peace or the release from guilt or whatever it is that they've come to me with a question about on that particular day.
Right. And so do you find, uh, are they're just as eager to connect, to their owners, to their loved ones, as the owners are to connect with them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's almost like they're so relieved and excited to have the opportunity to have a voice.
Right.
And that's what I consider about the work that I do is giving these animals an opportunity to have a voice. They're communicating with us all the time. Anyone who's ever lived with a pet knows that there are subtle signs and communication options. And we as humans are the ones who are blocking that communication. So for these animals, especially on the other side, to have an opportunity to say, here's what I've been trying to tell you. They're so excited to have that chance to get a message through.
So then what would be a tip that you could give to a pet owner to be more open to those signs, like how to read their pet or to understand them when they're living?
Pay attention, open yourself up, trust. That's the biggest thing, right? Trust. If you ever had that moment where you're like, I wonder if the dog needs water, and you go and the water bowl's empty, understand that that was a subtle form of communication, energetically speaking, between your dog and you. Oh, the water bowl is empty. How about that? I really was paying attention.
Right.
Be present. Be present. Spend time with your animals. They are not just creatures living in our homes. They are part of us.
Right.
Not just part of our families, but part of us. They're an extension of us. Not really an extension. That's not what I'm trying to say. Our energies are commingled if we are really living in right relationship with our animals. So
Right.
opening ourselves up to recognize that is a huge part of building a relationship with your animal.
And that was something that I had to understand when I was getting, when I got my pets, like when I got the dogs in particular. And if my anxiety is up, I pace a lot. And poor Bruce, he's just 3 this month. So he is a Bulldog Shar-Pei cross, beautiful brindle boy. And if I start pacing, he starts almost drooling and then pacing as well too. So, it's no different. It was an eye opener for me to have accountability for my own emotions and how I was presenting myself with and holding the space, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And here's an interesting thing. People ask me all the time, does my animal take on my stuff for me so that I don't have to feel it? And I've never really found that to be as simple an answer as that. But many of us who do love our animals to the extent that we might consider, too much, it's not too much. It's never too much. When there are so many things that we are willing to do, recognize, care for in our animals, that we don't take the time or the energy or give ourselves permission to care for in ourselves. So a lot of times our animals will present behaviors, symptoms from a discomfort or an illness that we will pay attention to because it's our animals and we love them so much. If we stop and really notice, they're showing us something about ourselves. Sometimes they'll mirror it back to us. Oh, my dog has so much anxiety. Well, have you stopped to consider your own level of anxiety?
Right. Through the roof.
Yeah.
Depending on the day. And I find too, when I've had sessions that, not that some are lighter or heavier, but some definitely have more healing that is happening through them. Right. So when I've done those sessions, him in particular, crawls up and grounds me at the at the same time. Susan Murdoch is just saying, my son's dog seems to read and feed off of his anxiety as well too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be true. Or feed off of. Yeah, or they
respond to even,
respond
right?
to, and they show it back to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hear about all of these amazingly trained animals who are trained to, to diagnose diabetes spikes or seizures or things like that. I mean, animals are so sensitive energetically to our energies that when you notice your dog showing anxiety or feeding off anxiety, it's a moment to stop and reflect and look at yourself and go, time for me to manage my own anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Bruce literally slides up and puts his head right on my chest, like he's almost laying the full length of and it feels the same for me as if I was standing on grass.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that whole grounding out, it's the same. So and it's a pause. And then you go through that whole ego thing as well too, recognizing that we're putting out some ick energy within this space, and then you have to be held accountable, and they still love you unconditionally.
Unconditionally. They have mastered unconditional love. We could only strive to be as in love as they are. When you said that about Bruce, I pictured him unrolling himself on your body like a weighted blanket. Like,
yeah, that's how he feels. Exactly. And I can feel when our breath almost starts to get in unison, and then my shoulders relax and my tongue comes down off the roof of my mouth and my jaw relaxes. So you can feel where he's reminding me to be centered and present for myself, right? Especially if I've been super swirly.
Yeah. And without that reminder, you might continue spiraling around like the Tasmanian devil, doing all the things you're doing. But because you love your dog so much, you're like, oh, Bruce, I'll lie here with you for a second. Oh, let's breathe together. Oh, now we feel a lot better.
Right. Kim Perper was just mentioning that animals are our best teachers. Yeah, they are amazing teachers. Kim Perper is just mentioning that as well too. So what have you learned about yourself in doing this work?
Oh, God. I don't even know where to begin there.
Right.
I mentioned that I have a bit of a background in, actually, I'm a certified dog trainer with a focus in behavior modification. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story of how I got there, if that's...
I would love to hear it.
Okay. So I was raised by Siamese cats. Only had cats, never had dogs in my life, in my home, in my life. And then 20 some odd years ago, my Vader would have been 20 this past year, brought in a dog, big old black German Shepherd Lab. God bless him. And he was the best dog. And I'm so glad he was, because I wasn't ready to learn my lessons at that time.
Is that Barnabas?
Nope. This was Vader. This was
Vader.
20 years ago.
Right.
And then came Zod. I've got crazy animal names like you do.
Yeah.
And we had the two of them for years and years and years. And then Vader started declining. Zod had never been without him. So we decided, Zod needs a puppy. Well, we decided not to go get one, to wait for one to find us. A dear friend had a litter of black labs, and we went to meet them, and we accidentally got two. And then
accidentally.
Well, I fell in love with one and my husband fell in love with the other. And we said, oh, it'll be so wonderful. They'll be brothers together.
Right.
And yeah. And then, contrary to what we believed was going to happen, Vader lived for another year and a half. So here we are with 4 Labradors running around in our smallish house, our smallish yard, plus the 5 cats that also lived here. Well, I'm down here in Mississippi. We have a lot of very traditional training down here. I was trying to find a trainer to work with these 2 puppies, and I couldn't find anything that felt right to me. It all just felt wrong. It was very forceful and very punishment based. And I just thought, this doesn't seem right to me. First, like ding, ding in my intuition there, right?
Good job.
And then my 2 brothers started fighting each other, which talk about channeling some anxiety in your life, right? Vader and Zod both eventually passed, and then I had Quentin and Barnabas. Do you remember Dark Shadows?
Yes.
Yep. So named after Barnabas Collins and Quentin Collins. And I couldn't find a trainer that I felt satisfied with. So I went and studied for 2.5 years and became a positive reinforcement dog trainer.
That's so brilliant.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and I thought, well, this was what? Barnabas will be 10 July the 4th. So this is 9+ years ago. And I thought, here I am in my early 40s, and I've finally discovered the path I want to be on.
As most of us women do.
And then shortly thereafter is when I happened upon this webinar after my kitty died and discovered animal communication. Well, in my head, I thought, well, animal communication will support me in my training.
Right.
And what's ended up being the case is that my knowledge of behavior and my training has ended up being helpful in my animal communication.
Isn't that interesting? But you followed the signs that brought you exactly where you were needing to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. End of that story is Quentin, the brother, had lots and lots of anxiety issues and reactivity issues and behavior issues and all of those things. How did I recognize that playing into my own emotions? I didn't until very late in the game, when I realized my own anxiety was through the roof. Was he playing off of me? Was I playing off of him? I still don't know, but I do know that he was a very significant, at that point, he was my greatest teacher. He taught me a lot about myself. He made me stop and recognize how much I was willing to do for others and how I needed to turn that back around and learn to do for myself. He passed in January of last year, leaving only Barnabas. And everyone started saying, you've always had so many animals. Barnabas needs a puppy. Go get Barnabas a puppy. And intuitively, and also from a self-care perspective, I was like, I don't have a puppy in me. I can't do a puppy right now. I've got to figure out how to recover from the last 9 years of managing this scenario and all of these issues that these two dogs brought together. I'm just going to let Barnabas let me know what he wants.
Right.
Barnabas is now living as an only dog, and he is living his greatest life. We have developed such an amazing relationship. It's like Quentin left. His lesson with me was complete in this body at this time. And the torch was handed to Barnabas. And now Barnabas is teaching me this lesson. These lessons, lots of lessons about growing and expanding and trusting and being true to myself and all of those things. It's been pretty amazing.
I remember, because we are friends on social media as well too, reading the obituary that your husband wrote. I cried. I was laughing and crying and weeping. So it's not just like it's your whole family that is so emotionally invested in and family oriented. So do you find that your loved ones that you are living with, their intuitive connection is also grows just from being in proximity with you in what you do and how you teach and how you interact, even if you're not even aware of how you are responding? Are they opening up as well too?
I think the answer to that is yes. Although
consciously or subconsciously, right?
Subconsciously, for the first time in a long, long time, we're down to empty nesters, it's just my husband and me here. And, looking back to when we met, I was completely hiding, right? When I came and met you, like I didn't tell anyone I think I told my husband I was going to a friend's house. And
I remember that.
You remember? And then I booked a session with you and I didn't tell him.
Yeah. I've been lots of people's dirty little secret for a while.
Right. My dirty secret. But then the messages that came through in that first session with you were for him, because I was open to receiving them and he was not. And then he was furious when I came home and finally spilled the beans and said, I have messages for you. He's kind of danced that line for many, many years.
Right.
But the more of this work I'm doing, he says, I don't know what you're doing or how you do it, but it's pretty amazing.
Well, you are amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So he's opening up, definitely.
Yeah, that's
but
brilliant.
would never be the one to say that. Now, what I have discovered is being in my geographical location when I first started doing this practice work, like I had to do animal communication readings for 20 people in order to get certified. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to call from my college friends up in New England and my, my woo-woo
Right.
friends up in Canada. And who do I know on the East Coast? It's amazing. When I did begin opening up, the energy that attracted like people to me.
Right.
And there are way more people than I would have ever thought in my immediate sphere who are wide open, who are wide open.
It's a funny thing, right? When we make the choice to step out of that closet
Mm-hmm.
and start talking about it, everybody. I mean, there's still a bit of a push pull, but do you feel that if we're putting that energy out where our animals can pick up when we're anxious, that if we're putting that fear out, we're going to get a fear response first until we're come a little more confident, then we've raised that vibrational level and like meets like, right? So then we're pulling in the people who
Absolutely.
are supportive. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also the alternate side of that is recognizing the other relationships that maybe have fallen away,
Right.
because
Oh yeah.
they're no longer a fit.
With gratitude and everything is and releasing that. Jody
With
McGrath is
gratitude.
just asking, have you worked with horses? And if so, how do you feel they compare in their connections maybe to other animals?
I've done readings for horses. I've not spent a lot of time with horses. I've only ever ridden horses like on a few vacations and at summer camp when I was a kid. But I have a ton of friends and colleagues who do horse healing therapies.
Right.
And talk about attracting the things that you need to attract. I've recently been asked to serve on a local board of a nonprofit that does horse healing therapies
Oh,
for
amazing.
mainly for veterans and children with disabilities and things like that. I know zero about horses, but walking into the stable to meet these horses for the first time, I was a little afraid. These are enormous creatures, right? And feeling there's an energy from them that's amazing. There are a couple of horse retreats that various members of our community do that I would love to go on. Horses are known to be incredibly intuitive and incredibly skilled at reflecting ourselves back to us to show us what we need to work on.
Right.
So, roundabout way of saying I haven't done a lot of work with horses, but I fully intend to. What I have done has been pretty powerful.
So in that intention, do you find people are starting to ask you more about horses? So it's like these little trickles of this question pointing you into, okay, I guess that's the next step where I'm needing to go.
Every time I look up, there's something else about horses getting put in front of me. Time to
Yeah.
do this, time to do that. And at least I'm finally open enough to recognize them and go, okay, I hear you. I hear you. We're getting there.
Yes. So let's talk about the Animal Communication Collective.
Oh, it's my favorite thing in the whole wide world.
Tell me all about it. Tell our listeners all about it.
Okay, so the Animal Communication Collective is an amazing association of, we're close to 40 now, women-led, friends and colleagues. We all trained through the same school together.
Right.
Karen Dundee Smith, my dear friend and colleague, came up with this idea and presented it to a group of us. And I stepped up and said, I'm right here with you. So she came up with the idea, founded this organization. I jumped in as sort of her co-director, and we've expanded upon it. What we do is connect with 501c3 nonprofit shelters and rescues, and we create these online fundraising events. We spend about 6 or 8 weeks before the event working with the organization, planning, helping create the graphics, helping come up with the plans. 100% of the proceeds from these events go to the shelter or rescue.
Fabulous.
We have a team of 4 communicators plus 2 people who kind of are behind the scenes running tech and keeping us all afloat while we do it. We do them all online, mostly through Zoom. And the organization sells tickets to their supporters, their people out there. And then we all get on in pairs, do tandem readings for the attendees, animal communication readings throughout the course of the event.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we do little mini, like 8 to 10 minute readings for people, and help these organizations raise funds for the so many needs out there for shelters and rescues. So
Right.
many needs.
So
Completely volunteer.
If
100%
somebody is
volunteer.
listening, if a shelter or an organization is listening, how would they find you if they wanted to reach out?
We are online at the animalcommunicationcollective.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us pretty easily, and there is a quick link on the homepage of our website that says, let's work together. You can reach out to any one of us, and we're happy to set up an informational meeting to kind of let you know how an event like this would work.
Right. And how long has that been running? Like, did it start?
We're nearing the end of our second year.
Right. I was just going to ask if it started through COVID.
Gosh, and I wish that I had pulled up the information about our fundraising efforts to date. In our first year, we're kind of figuring it all out. We did an amazing amount of fundraising for these organizations. This year to date, we've already almost doubled the amount that we did in our first year.
Isn't that something, eh?
We have an event coming up next Thursday night for an organization in Massachusetts called Sweet Paws Rescue. We have another the following week for a farm animal sanctuary in Georgia called Farm of the Free. We've worked with organizations from coast to coast, kitties, puppies, dogs, cats, horses, pigs. Someone asked I think you asked me if the animals come through differently depending on the type of animal. We've done some amazing readings for roosters and sheep and pigs, and it's incredible. It's incredible. Right. It doesn't matter what species. They are so willing to talk and communicate.
I know I did a session for someone once, and their pet bird came through, and I actually thought it was the young fellow's girlfriend. Because the way she came in, she was so attached and sharing information. There was so much love. I thought it was a girlfriend at first. I didn't even realize it was a bird the way that she came in.
That's hilarious. What made you realize it was a bird?
When they started to share how they passed.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, oh, that's not normal for a human female. There's a few bits and bobs that don't make sense to me. So it was kind of, oh, yeah. Then I had my aha moment. But the connection was just as intense. Like the amount of love was there. That was wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. And sometimes it's even greater than any girlfriend that guy ever had.
Probably.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe better that the bird was in spirit, because I don't know if a human could compete with the bird. There would probably be some jealousy issues to have to work through.
Yeah. And I've run into that in some readings too.
Get out. I want to know about that.
Yeah. Well,
because if they pick up, so is it that the owner needs to pay attention because their pet is going, yeah, no, walk away, red flag, or is it warming up to it, or both?
It's been both. It's been both sides of that coin. Yeah.
Is that hard to give? That message?
It is, but that story. There's some messages you're like, okay, guys, team, help me out here. Give me the words to say the things that I need to say, because this is a hard one. But I think you know me well enough to know I'm pretty straightforward and transparent, but I'm also very kind. I will never say anything with malice or anything, that I would find hurtful. But there have been messages I've had to deliver where I would have to say, okay, this is a really hard thing to say. So I'm just going to put it out there in exactly the words I heard it in.
Right. Just the messenger.
Just the messenger. I'm not going to try and interpret this. I'm going to repeat to you the words that your cat just said to me. And you'll have to tell me what that means to you. That's a really important part of this work. And I'm sure you run into that too, is sometimes it's hard as a human not to try and put the story together.
Oh, I don't have the energy to. I just don't have the energy to try to put the puzzle pieces together for people.
Well, but even to the, minimalized extent of saying, well, I saw this and this is what this often means to me.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
my job to say, I see this, I feel this, I hear this, give you the raw data. You tell me what it means to you. And if it
Yeah.
means nothing, I do have some things in my intuitive toolbox that mean something to me every time they show up in a reading.
Right.
But I always want to give the sitter the opportunity to tell me if it means something to them before I stick in their head what it means to me.
Right.
But we just have to be real careful not to interpret and just say, here's the message. I don't know what it means. Does a purple kangaroo mean anything to you?
Right.
Let me know.
And depending, do you find like grief can be very thick, and it can warp perceptions and warp how people are receiving a message that is coming at them. So do you run into, kind of what this message is, but the sitter's maybe not receptive to hearing what it is you have to say? That's a delicate situation too.
It's a delicate situation. For that reason, I frequently request not to do readings for people who have just lost an animal. Not necessarily because the animal's not ready to come through yet.
Right.
My teacher calls it going to spirit school. Like, they need a little time to settle in on the other side and feel what it's like to come back to source energy and not be living in this body. But as much as that, if not even more so, when a person is sitting in such intense grief,
Mm-hmm.
they are very clouded. They are
Mm-hmm.
very closed off. They have created their own story about their role in the animal's passing or lack thereof, or whatever it is. That we all know grief is not linear. There is no timeline.
That's right.
But after a couple of weeks, when some of the weight has started releasing, people are a little bit more willing to receive the messages.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, I guess that's just part of, the intuitive aspect of it, and the kindness and lovingness and the asking for everything to be for the greatest and highest good, to ask for the right words to say in a way that it can get through these mountains and mountains of grief that people are living with.
Yeah. I know for me too, making sure that person has a support system.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a support system, or are you going to be alone after this, especially if it's feeling a little more raw? If it's a little sooner, right?
Yeah.
And asking if they have a support system. Do you find after doing sessions for people that it clicks something for them where they also want to be involved in animal communication? So same journey as you, right? Do you find people asking for a second session so they can know more about how they could maybe follow suit?
Yes, I'm not going to say that's always, but I definitely tend to attract. I've never considered myself a teacher. I've considered
Really?
myself, yeah.
I said that feeling like Scooby-Doo. Really? Like, yes. Because I immediately was the first vibe. Cheerleader, support system, that those are words that I associate with you. And I think that you have the gentleness to hold space for people to come to their awareness and guide them with love. Like, I just think you'd be a brilliant teacher.
Holding space and supporting people, yes, that is my thing. But I kind of like to be in the wings, not center stage. Like, even doing this publicly, I'm so glad that I'm just sitting here chatting with you. I don't know who's out there, Yeah, I'm kind of the behind the scenes. Hey, you did a great job out there.
Yeah.
Part of that, though, I know, is that I had a teacher who told me I wasn't a teacher. And so that's a negative belief that I have not yet pulled out of me and gotten rid of.
Well, that can kiss off with love. Away you go. It needs to go, that one.
Yeah. But I do find that I tend to attract people who want to just have a conversation about knowing more. And I attract people who are opening up but aren't quite sure how to go about that.
Right.
And I think that's just because it's so similar to my journey, and if I had known earlier in my life that I could actually reach out to people and talk about this, I might not have wasted the first 40 years trying to shove down being sensitive and emotional and all of those things that I got
Right.
told my whole youth and childhood,
Yeah.
if I had realized earlier that my sensitivity, my compassion, my emotion, all of those things are actually my greatest gifts rather than something that I needed to figure out how to overcome.
Or
Maybe I
tone
could have,
down.
yeah, maybe I could have taught people earlier, but I bring in people with those same questions. And I think the majority of people who are in intuitive work um, had a similar experience. We all probably knew something from early on in our lives, but then squashed it to do the right thing, to get the job, to get married, to have the kids, to get the whatever. And now we're like, ooh, but this is what I've always been. And
Right.
oh my God, I'm so happy to be surrounded by a community who also understands that and who also supports me in that. And we all support each other.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
One of the things that I'd like to do with the show, and have it as part of every show, in asking the guests, like, how do you keep, or do you have any tips and tools to share with us about, or for our listeners, in keeping an open mind and having that sense of wonder, like a little kid, like being open-minded to open, like animal communication, being open to being able to empathically or intuitively, pick up on the messages that their living pets are trying to give them. How do you maintain or keep that sense of childlike wonder? Because it's really that place that keeps us open.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's an interesting question for me, and I hadn't really ever considered that before, because I think in terms of opening up and doing this work, I have such a sense of childlike wonder that it's never occurred to me to have to figure out how to get that. In fact, part of this was during COVID, when we're all like, well, what are we going to do? We can't go anywhere. And I signed up for so many webinars, some of which I forgot about, never actually went to, but even now, there are so many more things I want to learn. There's so many more aspects of this work and other versions of this work that I want to study. And it's just finding the time and the energy to do that. My best friend tells me I'm a lifelong learner, but if I could sit and study and learn all of these things from all of these amazing teachers, I would do it. Unfortunately, I still have, my real life. I hate to call it that, but, I own a business and I run
Right.
another business, and I still have all of these things that require my focus on a daily basis. If I could get rid of all those things and do this and keep learning and keep wondering and keep inspiring people to keep learning and keep wondering and find that childlike vision in them, that is what I would do.
But you must have been that way as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And looking back, I never really wondered why I felt the way that I did, why I felt such a connection with animals. It's funny. One of my signs when I know I'm truly connected with an animal in a reading is I get this electrical tingly at the end of my nose. And I actually have a very distinct memory of I couldn't have been more than 5 years old, at my best friend's house playing with his dog. And the dog came right up to me and his nose was this far away from mine. And I felt this crazy electrical tingling at the end of my nose.
Isn't that something?
I didn't ask at the time what that was, what that meant, any of those things. And it wasn't until I began this work here 45 years later that I went, oh, that's that feeling.
Right.
I've always had it.
And we get sidetracked as we get older. We want to fit in when we're in school, so we dumb down parts of who we are. We have responsibilities as adults, and we tend to forget the things that brought us joy or experiences that we had. And when we get that aha moment where we can return to it, it's like everything is wide open and magical again.
Yeah.
I can connect to animals, and look at how this is happening to me now. And I remember this joy that I had as a little kid.
And I'll tell you, when I first had that aha moment, I looked back on however many years that I did try and kind of push it down and hide it. And at first I was a little ticked off, wow, look at all this time I blew with this magic in my world, um, because of trying to fit in and be the right person and do the right thing and all of that. But I have to understand, and I have to give myself some grace and some forgiveness that I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
When I was ready, the lessons began appearing. And the key now is just to stay open to them and let them keep coming, keep seeking, but keep allowing at the same time.
So do you find animals will come through no different than people, where it will be random? Like you might have the smell of a wet dog coming in just random, and that's just your pet letting you know that they're there. Those signs and symbols, are there specific ones or certain things that people can do to be more open to that connection?
I tell people to just allow themselves to be open to the possibility that these things will come through. Some of the most common are, hearing your dog bark in the middle of the night, or hearing the cat scrambling on the hardwood floors, or munching on kibble in the laundry room. For me, I had a cat who went through 8.5 of his 9 lives before he died. He was diabetic. We almost lost him twice, and diabetic crises and all of that. And of course, when he was older and ill and in kidney failure, we had to take up all of our rugs. We had to, we couldn't leave anything on the floor because he just went to the bathroom everywhere. Well, he was also a sweet, funny cat. And sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I smell cat pee.
Yeah, Erin.
And I'm like, this is how you're coming to me. This is how you're going to show yourself to me. The wet dog. Yes. I had one that smelled like corn chips all the time.
Oh, that's funny.
And so do I smell him? Yes, I do. Open yourself up to the possibility that any of those things are signs that they're here. And some of them are funny and some of them are tender and some of them just are what they are.
Yeah. And do you find like it's non-thinking moments? That's what I tend to tell people. It's in a non-thinking moment when you're not trying hard to make something happen is when it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find
and a lot of times going to sleep or waking up, when your defenses are down, the in-between stage, or when you're in the middle of a tedious task, scrubbing the floors or cleaning the bathtub or whatever. Yeah, it's sort of that non-thinking moment. Yeah, that's the way I would put it.
Yeah, I agree in that non-thinking moment. And paying, again, if we're paying attention to the animals that are here, they'll respond to the animals that are in spirit that were part of the family before them.
Wait, say that again.
Like our animals that we have living with us, like in our physical world, paying attention to the things that they do, because they will respond to the animals that were part of the family before them that are now in spirit, right? Like,
absolutely.
If we're not
sitting in the corner looking at nothing.
Yeah. If we're not paying attention, they're paying attention, and they pick up.
Yeah. And sometimes they're calling us to pay attention. And a lot of times I don't know as much about this as you, obviously, but a lot of times the animals are paying attention to human energies, humans who have crossed over, who are coming to give us signs.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's my own block, and it's something that I'm going to have to look at, because I really do. I hold my breath when I start to feel animals come through in spirit. I immediately hold my breath and go, like, because it just touched me. I just have this thing. It's so funny because I'll talk to dead folks all day long. Pets can come in and show me stuff, but as soon as they touch me, it just gives me the heaves. I don't know why. It's like finding floaties in the dishwater, like it just gives you that heave. So I have to learn to relax into it a little more, because I know I'm closing the door and it starts to sound like the teacher from Charlie Brown.
Well, what if you just said, oh, I think there's an animal here? What have you got to say to me? I mean, you receive messages all the time. If you open yourself up to that, don't you think that you get messages from them as well?
Well, I guess I need to lean into it a little bit more, because they really, I'm in a lane. I always say I'm like a dog with bones. So I get in this lane where I'm receiving messages from somebody, and then all of a sudden I can feel a cat has just, when you get that startled when they jump onto your lap, all of a sudden I feel startled because I have this cat that's jumped and spinning in a circles and starts doing the, kneading dough. I'm like, oh my God, it's touching me.
Well, maybe that's why it's touching you, because the cat's been hanging out in the corner going, "Hey, Caroline, hey."
Yeah, exactly.
Just say, "I'm going to get on your lap. I'm going to start chewing on your hair until you hear me."
Can I just send them to you? Go see my friend Meredith.
Sure you can.
Her light's bright. Meredith will take you.
Excuse me. No, that's funny. That's funny. You love animals. It's just
I do.
It cross into your lane. It's
I just
out
don't
of your zone, right?
Yeah, I just don't want them to touch me. So I think that maybe that's something, I think a learning curve for me too, right? And I know that setting those rules and boundaries with people in spirit, I felt more comfortable saying this is working for me and this doesn't. So is it the same as, can you do the same with animals when they're coming in? This is working for me. You're just not allowed to touch me, but you can show me things. Does it work the same?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I feel like a child. I wonder, like, educate me, Meredith.
Yeah, I just, I create a boundary around me. They're, it's not like they're just showing up and talking to me all the time. I invite them in and I say, this is a good time. And sometimes, if they're coming in a way that is not completely comfortable to me, I have to back up and consider what my intention was.
Okay.
Going in. And then, yeah, I can say, okay, this isn't working for me. This is too frenetic, or it's a little bit scary or whatever. Show this to me in a way, tell it to me, smell it to me, show it to me, whatever, in a way that I'm comfortable with and I can understand. Because if I'm anxious with the message I'm receiving, I can't possibly deliver that with clarity to my client.
And not wanting to upset a client by presenting something that feels anxious as well too, right?
Right.
Especially if they're stuck in a trauma, if they're stuck in the trauma of that passing. It just,
right. Yeah.
Of course, salt in the wound.
There are plenty of times that I've had to say to a client, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety. I'm feeling that, that feeling on the top of my stomach, like you just passed a police officer going 30 miles over the speed limit. I'm feeling all of that.
I don't know. I've never done that. Have you?
Oh, of course you haven't.
I was so nervous going on that Natchez Trail. The Natchez Trail, that I just did not want to get pulled over there.
Well, it's 50 miles an hour. There, drop offs on either side. You kind of have to creep. You just hope you were doing it in the fall when the leaves are pretty and the trees are blooming.
I know, it's so crazy. I miss Tupelo. I miss everybody there.
Well, come on down, honey. We'll have us a big old time.
I think so.
We'll have us a big old time. I love that an animal touching you or jumping in your lap is something that you're aware of, but you're like, oh, this is not quite my thing.
It's not my thing. It's your thing.
Yeah. But, there's so much about your thing that I've wanted so much. Oh my gosh, if I could just see someone appear in front of me. But what would I do if that actually happened? There's no telling.
You'd go call Caroline.
That's a Caroline, guess what happened?
I'm okay with that. And we can support each other in the journey, right? Which is what it's all about. Yeah. How can people find you? So you can
find me. My website is meredithtollison.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm an Instagram idiot, but I'm learning. I'm trying so hard.
It's a whole other beast.
Absolutely. And then again, through the Animal Communication Collective, links to all of our team members are right there on the website. So you can find me in a lot of different ways. And I just keep popping up in these online things. So maybe you'll trip over me somewhere else too.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing time, space, and energy with me and all of our listeners. Thank you to everybody that's been hanging out with us today. Thank you to all the people in the chat rooms, and a huge shout out to the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Network 105.3 and 107.7 for giving me this opportunity and having you on here. This was brilliant, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's been such a joy and just such a pleasure to sit and chat with you. I hope that this has been helpful and meaningful to some of your your listeners.
Yes, I'm sure that it has. And I can't wait to do this again.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to Spirit Switchboard with host Carrie Lynn Shelhorn on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 New Orleans.